people are walking into this trap that it's like a self-inflicted trap that is going to be amplified as a collective trap, which is a powerless and hopeless state of being that is just another version of separation. It's a gauntlet. It's actually it's a gauntlet of energy, and being electrical and magnetic beings and constantly moving, constantly changing, constantly amplifying our charge, our electric charge, being an organic being mixed in with the spirit space, or coming from having a spirit space manifest an organic reality, and then have that kind of blend into this mixture we call the physical reality and the human experience. Every single element that is a part of this balance to that soul expression, or that spiritual or spirit manifestation within the body, every single element that we have within our bodies is on purpose. So when we have fluoride extra in our water, just imagine kids drinking fluoridated water every day. Gallons and gallons and gallons of fluoride is going into their body. Whether it's actual fluoride, literal fluoride, or psychological fluoride to calcify the brain as a whole, calcify your consciousness with the public education system and university system and the separation program as a whole. All of these things are very much intertwined with how we experience our reality from, and I'm taking this to an electrical charge version. Our heartbeat being energy, and then just to take this perspective and relate it to chemtrails in a moment, we are seeing us as just like an electrical grid mixed in with a magnetic harmonics of some sort, and that creating that electromagnetic field, and seeing how the elements that are all making up our body, that just as the elements that make up our psyche, our consciousness, our character, our personality, our culture, our interactions as a whole, how we connect, all this has an electrical charge. And when you spray an element that is not part of the mix, it sends a shockwave through the entire atmosphere, the individual atmosphere and the collective atmosphere. They want you wearing this every day. You are literally putting aluminum on your body, in your bloodstream every day. It's putting a toxic element into your bloodstream every single day. Then you walk out into the atmosphere and be caked with it every single day. So this is affecting the conductivity. We are conductive beings, and we have our education system that takes away our spark, our energy, and it locks our space into this low vibrating, dull sort of interaction. And physically, our electrical charge is being adjusted. This shit is everywhere. Cookware, foil, flatware, cans for food and drink, antacids. It's in everything. So chemtrails are just the what we see in the sky. This is literally chemtrailing that we're doing to ourselves. And it's fucking with our conductivity, because you can ingest gold, like you can ingest platinum, you can ingest silver and even copper on like these micro levels, and this affects your body in a certain way. So if you can feel just for a moment like what would happen if you were on like a gold diet, like drinking the micro levels of gold on a regular basis. And I've looked into Ormus, and I've actually used the gold Ormus before, and it did affect my dreams. It did give me like an energy or a boost that is, it's hard to explain, but it just shifts your entire feeling, your entire vibration, your electrical charge. That's what it really felt like. I felt what gold feels like in the body. I felt what platinum feels like inside the body. And just from, not even having to have done that before, just ask yourself, like, we already know what lead does to the body, having all this stuff in the water supply, stuff in lead and paint. So we are literally being attacked on a micro scale, and we're the ones that are allowing this to happen. So we have lead in the paint, we got lead in the water, we got aluminum in the skies, we got aluminum in our deodorant, we have aluminum in our baking powder. That was the last thing that I saw that was really just like, what the fuck is going on here? This stuff is not meant for us, but it's being pumped out on a regular basis. Once ingested, aluminum accumulates in various tissues in the body, including the kidneys, brain, lungs, liver, and thyroid. So this stuff accumulates in these energy centers, and it's affecting the conductivity of those harmonics on the body level. So if this is happening in our bodies, just imagine what chemtrail spraying is doing to the earth body, and what that's doing to our connection as a whole, our the organic internet that we have. Like when you go into intuition and synchronicity, this is happening on the inner planes with our bodies, but our higher spaces, our awakening space, our expansion, our connection with the Most High, outside of it, creates a conductivity. Once you start to, like laughter, when you're with somebody you love, there's more energy there. So there's more conductive, there's more organic energy that's being pumped up into the allness of experience within the waking state. So seeing the human experience as like 10 people, and then see electrically how it would feel if they were pumped up, like had aluminum injections and lead injections. But I forgot about mercury too. Mercury in the vaccine. So we got mercury, these toxic ass chemicals or elements that are being pumped into our body. We got a mercury, the vaccines. You got lead in the paint, lead in the water, lead in the pipes, and then you got aluminum in the sky, in the air. So we are being poisoned literally, and then all this stuff it's mixing within our bodies. It's creating this cancer industry. It's creating this space. So regardless of what we might think or ponder on what chemtrails are and what they're doing and nanobots and all this shit, fuck the nanobots. Think about what it's actually doing right now. Before you even the nanobot shit comes really later, when you're seeing that people are already dying. Like it's already, if it is nanobots, it's already been going on for decades. So it's already here, and we can only deal with something like that when whatever they're doing it for kicks into gear. But we can already see what's already been kicked into gear, which is how we are utilizing, or we are doing this shit to ourselves when we still use these deodorants and this baking powder and baby powder and lipsticks, and even another toxic thing, the petroleum jelly. Like that's literally petroleum, putting it on your lips, Vaseline. You know, people rub Vaseline all over their bodies, and this is literally just this toxic ass element. It is not an organic thing. It's straight up cancer causing bullshit. Everything about this medical industry and this healthcare industry, all this shit, it's all a distraction from what is actually happening. Aluminum competes with calcium for absorption, and it can result in reduced skeletal mineralization. In infants, this retards growth. It also interferes with phosphorus absorption, zinc, and selenium. Eating foods cooked in aluminum cookware can cause inflamed colon. Consuming antacids. Yeah, all these antacids, shit, this is so fucked up. So all this stuff is normal. Like, this is normal for us to have all this aluminum. We're being poisoned on a regular basis. If we're talking about chemtrails in the sky and you're still using this deodorant, then you know, what's the difference? You know, you're chemtrailing yourself every day. Our electrical charge is being jacked with, and seeing us as energy from just basically electrical and magnetic harmonics along with consciousness. If they lock down one version of our experience, which could be the body and the air that we breathe, the water that we are, the earth, the food that we eat, then that energy could be channeled to another. Can be channeled down to be turn the whole radio off completely, which is what happens when we get dumbed down. So our body is being dumbed down. These so-called powers that be are banking on ignorance. They're banking on disease. They're banking on toxicity. This is how they make this profit and maintain a hierarchy and a space of supremacy, is to dumb everybody down and keep everybody on this low vibrating space, this low electrical charge, barely functioning electrical charge. And chemtrails are very a part of this dumbing down scenario that is no different than the new age thought process of kind of like, if that's an electrical charge, if you have a maximum potential of electrical and magnetic connection to your most high energy, the new age deception, the new age reality would be just like, if you're connecting organically with like gold, platinum, diamond connections, just like your whatever you can imagine as your most streamlined and high vibrational connections to like a frequency you would understand as the most high, the new age connections that talk about only love and light, which is just another version of separation, ignorance, and dumbing down so people can get locked into this dormant state of being, that could be seen as like a aluminum, lead, and mercury type of connection where you might get a little electrical charge here and there, but it's not going to be your maximum potential. You'll still exist inside a box, like a little tiny aluminum radio, when your maximum potential is like a gold, diamond, platinum radio. We're talking about vibrations. We're talking about energy. We're talking about the energetic rays that you absorb and the energetic rays that you emit. And those wavelengths are largely based upon how you perceive your reality. So if you perceive your reality from a fear-based perspective, like a radio, microwave, infrared wave perspective, then you're really not making the most of your visible light energy, because you're stuck in like AM, FM frequencies, lower, longer wavelengths that take a longer time to experience time. Like it spreads out time to be more anchored in the physical reality. Whereas if you go into the life-giving spaces of ultraviolet, which is really just after violet, after, beyond the visible light spectrum, that's what ultraviolet means, which is what bees can actually see. Like bees can see ultraviolet. They can see the nectar of life. They can see more that is there. See, when we're in the visible light spectrum, we can just see like oh, that's pretty, but we miss out on the nectar because we're caught up in how pretty this flower looks to us. And we see like the natural beings, the energies who are in harmony with the earth plane and themselves, are seeing more of reality. They are experiencing more of reality. The bees are seeing ultraviolet light in order to engage in their reality. They can see the nectars of life. They can experience that space. They have that connection. We absorb light from the sun and create light with our music, our art, our reproductive organs. We create other creator beings with the experience that we exist as. And if we are locked into a reality that is heavily televised, heavily weighed down by microwaves and lower vibrating energies, then you are actually de-evolving yourself into a space of the nil. You're not even really a human anymore. You've been sucked into an almost a lower vibration, and like if we were to see just like animals, like an animalistic experience, instead of what your potential is within the visible light spectrum, and beyond that into the ultraviolet spectrums of absorbing energy, absorbing light, and emitting the frequencies that are beyond what we've just been told on a regular basis. And how I'm seeing this is that the ancients understood what our connections were. Like if we were bees and we can see ultraviolet lights, we could see the nectar of life. That's how I'm seeing like what these pyramids were. These pyramids were like a structure for us to create a power center that would be able to connect us to each other on a different wavelength than what we are normally communicating with on a regular basis. So if you're seeing these wavelengths at the top, they are shifting from this old radio, like see it as like back in the 40s when people would just sit around the radio and listen to the radio. Like that is a wavelength of conscious experience, and you are getting a download of your conscious experience from whoever is pumping out those energies. So like the pyramids could have been doing the same things back then with the obelisks and these arches that are all over the place. And that can go into, if it gets even further into like the maxing out of possibilities, like how I'm seeing like what these things were. These weren't tombs. So when they say like the pyramids were built to be tombs, they're basically just telling you this is how we perceive our reality, the university system as the we, and that's dead. So they're telling you that energy is dead. So they use that for death, and then when you say, oh, okay, yeah, those are just tombs, then you are killing off that connection, that understanding, that consciousness of what that really is, when in fact it could very well be the opposite of that, which is actually bringing life, activating life to the human relationship to nature and each other. And in that life is energy, and in that energy could be information and communication. It is information and communication. And this is what I feel Tesla was tapping into. And to see this be demonized and swept under the rug by the current system that we exist under right now, with the university system, the NASA programming, the globe model, it's a further separating of you from your maximum vibrations within and beyond the visible light spectrum of your conscious reality, and locking you into a dead, disconnected space of just barely existing. And the only way it really, the pillars stay afloat is because the magic is still alive within your subconscious. And your subconscious is surrounded by these subliminal messages that are pumped out through the television energetic frequencies, those waves, those vibrations, the radio waves, the television waves. They are subliminally programming you through your visible light eyeballs. And your subconscious is keeping a grid alive in order to have you be subconsciously aware of things, but consciously completely unaware of your basic existence and your maximum potentialities. And your maximum potentialities go beyond just these frequencies that are locked in, like with stuff like these obelisks that are strategically placed all over the world. And they originated in Egypt. So the energies that were being harnessed with the pyramids in Egypt, in Mexico, in China, in Cambodia, all over the world, these energies that were locked into some kind of grid are now have been numbed. They've been shut down because we have consciously separated ourselves from that reality existing and have been actually flipped it into like a dead space. And it's been replaced with these garbage ass frequencies, these synthetic versions of that maximum potential, like the Washington Monument and these obelisks, which are just really, how I'm seeing them, are just like, they're just antennas to the power center, which is like the pyramids. So you can see the individual as something like this too. Like You have the ways you experience your reality, your ears, your sensory, your senses, your five senses could be seen as like your obelisk, and in your heart could be seen as like your power generator, your pyramid that's locked in to the earth plane. So we've been separated from our heart spaces, our power centers, and you can see that as like the solar plexus being shut down too, with your willpower, your fire being taken away by the control grid, by the slave state mentality, and just replaced with your synthetic versions of understanding your physical reality and your so-called powers that be. So this stuff exists in a space that we can observe, but we're not really observing it. We're just like, it's just like walking by a piece of art that actually tells the story of life, and just being like, oh well, that's pretty. It's like, what the fuck? Like, don't you see what that says? Like, this is so far beyond, that's just pretty. And that's kind of like what happens to the feminine energy, and how the feminine energy has been locked into this totally separated idea of itself. Is like, oh, that's pretty. Like the curves, like, oh yeah, that's pretty. And instead of understanding the actual frequencies of each individual, and the spaces beyond that, everybody's stuck in this that visible light spectrum understanding of reality, and like, oh, this flower, that's pretty, never really understanding the nectar of life. So yeah, you can exist, you can be pretty, you can actually even reproduce, because that's pretty. But you won't really get into the nectar. You won't know how, like, these bees find a balance. They go around to these flowers, and they have that relationship to pollinate based upon, that's a shockwave through the entire life, the ecosystem all over the entire world. And when we are locked into, which is what's happening with these low vibrating energies like the television, these long wavelengths of separation, we get into this less than visible light spectrum of that's pretty mode, and really start to downgrade ourselves, because we don't know how to find the nectar anymore. We don't know what nectar is. We don't know the benefits of the nectars of life, because our nectar has now been downgraded to the visible light spectrum of, oh, that's pretty. We miss the point of our lives. But since the nature of our realities is the visible light spectrum, and the physical reality is part of our reproductive process, then you can create an entire world that is based upon only that, and you can actually downgrade the entire human into a beast. Pretty much, that's what it is. It's an animal, because we have the potentials to experience beyond the prettiness of our reality once we start to understand our connections with the sun, our connections and reflections of the sun and the moon, the stars, the so-called planets, and what those relationships really are. This is why everything is so separate within the university system and astrology, and this whole system that's been set up to us. It said this is the end-all be-all, like the Food and Drug Administration, their relationship, what they tell you about UV light, UV radiation, your connection with the sun, that's it. That's what it is. That's it. And all of their stuff, all of this FDA stuff, is based upon a sun being 93 million miles away, or billion miles away from you. Is it million or billion? I don't know. It's something stupid. Yeah, so basically it's separating you from light. So that's what, separating you from energy, separating you from yourself, separating you from truly understanding how you are an expression of, you are an actual sun yourself. Like, you emit light, you reproduce creative intelligence, you have a potential that is beyond the university system that we can't understand because we've been taught to demonize ourselves, demonize each other, separate ourselves from nature, and actually synthetically observe our reality instead of organically experience our reality. Those are two different things. And it's the difference between fear and love. We've been taught to fear the sun, fear the moon. All these vampire movies and all this like Dark Knight stuff and all this. It's just like fear, fear, fear. And you're missing out on the majority of your reality because your perceptors have been flipped. And the news, the television, the politics, everything is out there to tell you, this is what it's all about. And it's totally backwards. At the same time, they are activating the energies because they understand. They are playing with those high frequencies, those ultraviolet frequencies, those information waves that exist outside of our observable reality right now, because we've been trained to think that reality doesn't exist. So if there's like an internet on the ultraviolet spectrum, we won't know it because we've demonized the sun. We've demonized our relationship to nature, and we've completely separated ourselves from even that possibility. Just like if there was a potential of something, obviously there's something going on with these pyramids. If they're not tombs, and a lot of people really feel like they are power generators of some sort, they contain some kind of information, then what is that? And what is that relationship to the human being? And what kind of potentiality would that bring upon when we do realize that exists, instead of right now just believing that it's all about death? It's just a tomb. And what were those pyramids' connections to obelisks? And what were those obelisks and pyramids' connections to these arcs? And why are they so big? And why are they strategically placed in all over the place? What does all this stuff mean? Consciously. Because subconsciously, this shit is being flickerated in these movies, in our faces, all the time. They're playing with power, is what they're doing. They're trying to play with power. And I'm feeling like CERN has something to do with these relationship stuff, because it's not for nothing. Like, they would invest and if they're going to invest their, and the so-called they are going to invest their energy in anything, they're going to try to invest their energy into something that would be synthetically reproducing what was already produced here, in order to make themselves out to be some kind of something that we should look up to or follow, because they made some new toy or some new something. And if they don't succeed in what their original design was, then they can just reproduce whatever kind of distraction or lies on the television, the same way they got people to go into Iraq to go to war after 9/11. It's the same shit. It's like win-win for them. So as we are seeing this transition space of the power grid move, it's vulnerable right now. And in this vulnerable space, we have the ability to look beyond just what's presented to us. Like, find out what your nectar of life is, and see that it's beyond these AM, FM, shortwave, television, microwave realities that we've been bombarded with for so long. And that's actually what the university system is based upon. We're not even allowed to understand the nectar of the visible light spectrum, let alone be able to get good at it like the bees have, and see specifically what is beyond the violet space into the ultraviolet space, because that's been demonized. Like, we've been This is we are the living gateways in ourselves. That's why I made that video called "Your Mama's a CERN," is because the CERN, they're talking about bringing in energies like your mother, like the actual vagina portal brings in a creator being based upon whatever that soul signature was designed to bring in. So that's an example of what people are already like afraid of. We're being bombarded. Instead of focusing on like one channel on the television, you can see the entire television and the power grid connecting, that's allowing that television to go. Like CERN is just one channel you can observe as what bringing energies into this reality is all about. But that's not the biggest thing that's going on right here. The biggest energy is the biggest television and frequency emitter is the soul. This is where this whole obelisk and arch thing is, the relationship where I'm talking about as far as like bringing in energies. This is a synthetic version. Like the obelisk is obviously a penis and the arches is obviously a vagina. So what does that have to do with the power centers of the entire earth plane existence and our relationship, the human relationship to our experience, the nectar of life, our maximum potentials here, what's beyond this space, the control grid and how it works to keep us from experiencing that, the energy that we radiate from purely existing and the potential beyond that existence by actually growing and evolving into the organic space, the organic human reality, not the synthetic, demonizing, beastly version of our reality, but really going into seeing like what's up with all these different versions of light, because they had to create all this shit to make you scared. Like people are scared. Like when I put this on here, when I put ultraviolet, I'm like, I get sunburned. Like, okay, you get sunburned, but that actually also like brings life. So it's just one side to see the sunburn. If you focus on your sunburn, then you're actually forgetting about all the other sides that are existing right here. Because like, and this goes into like the melanin talk that I was talking about, and the peoples and the differences within the peoples here on the earth plane, and the absorption of light. Like melanated people absorb light. Sunscreen on this person's face right here, the sunscreen is not blocking the sunlight. The sunscreen is absorbing the sunlight so that the skin may be able to turn that energy into something beneficial for the individual instead of burning that person. So on the right side, you can see without sunscreen, that person gets burned. Well, we've been told that sunscreen blocks the light. Sunscreen doesn't do that. Sunscreen absorbs this light and transfers. This is how you can get a suntan when you have sunscreen on. So it's not screening you. It's actually absorbing this light, because you can see like in the ultraviolet spectrum, that individual, the right side of his face is black in ultraviolet reality. And the left side of his face is white because he has no sun absorption lotion on there. That's actually what it is. So we've been taught to demonize this and separate ourselves from truly understanding our relationships to how we observe light, how we experience our reality, who we are, what we are, and what this place is really about. We've been taught to focus on the fear-based, lower vibration sort of CERN, like they're just gonna bring in demons and all this other shit. It's like, all right, well, if they are allowed by the Most High energies and the angels to do what people are so afraid of, then what are you as an individual and as the human collective allowed to do as that energy? There has to be a balance. So if the fear frequency is amping up to perceived itself to be doing what it's doing with CERN and with, politics and the New World Order and all that other shit, then what is your potential within the higher frequencies and the shorter, faster wavelengths that exist within your very genetic coding? What is that space? Because they don't want you to tap into that reality. The so-called they want you to be locked into the long wave realities and just keep listening to the radio. Stay outside of yourself. So once we start reconnecting with who we are, get our power back, get our fire back, step outside of the fear complex and start to really see what's going on, we'll be able to seek the real nectar of life and start absorbing light instead of being fearful of it. The connections of the indigenous peoples with the understandings of nature and the connections with natures and the connections with stars and the connections with animals as far as understanding the animal spirits and those harmonics and what that all means and what this energy is, like long hair as far as like antennas, and then like what headdresses mean when you have chiefs who wear headdresses and when you have shamans who use certain plant lives, and these are all harmonics. These are all tapping into various layers of our experience, and it all has like a meaning and spread out as a whole, like expanding it further into the whole earth plane itself, and how we have different vibrations for different people, and different like horoscopes affect people differently. People act a certain way, people live their lives certain ways. When Mercury goes into retrograde, people feel a certain way. When the seasons change, people feel a certain way. Bears even hibernate for a certain an extended amount of time, and it's not as simple as just like the weather. Like it has to be. There's something more to our frequencies and what all this stuff means. We are a reflection, and like as above, so below. So we are a reflection of the stars. Then the horoscopes also exist down here within people, and it doesn't have to necessarily relate directly over to like locations on the earth plane itself, but we do see it as existing within individuals as far as like this harmonic. In some kind of way there's a balance. So if there's too many Libras in this certain point of time, and we need more Aquarius energy or we need more Taurus energy, then that will be manifest into this reality through the birthing process. And since we're so separated and individualized, we don't see these harmonics within ourselves. We don't see these connections to the stars, but we have this basic ass understanding of what horoscopes are and what astrology is. And even astrology is like the 12 signs of astrology and this whole thing that you're not even taking into account. Like this is a version of astrology. Like the Egyptians had their versions of astrology, and the Inca had their version, the Aztec, the Maya, the Olmec, that everybody had their versions of astrology. This is the European astrology that we are referencing today. The whole thing could be thrown completely off, but my point being is that we can feel it. Like we are an expressions of, like there's a lot of people. It exists. So how does it exist in the earth plane? We forgot our connections to each other. We forgot our connections to the animal spirits. We forgot our connections to the stars and the harmonics as a whole. And when they were saying, oh, well, these are savages. These are indigenous people. They're savages. They, in a sense, said the entire harmonic grid system and your purpose and meaning is savagery, and your reality is all now about the European version of experience, the whitewashing experience, and anything else outside of that, you will get killed. So it was the fear program that got amplified, like the dark ages of, so this iron age of destruction. These movements of the stars and the planets affect our emotion. So it's like emotion, E in motion. So like the energy in motion, intelligent energy in motion. We are this intelligent energy in motion, and this harmonics of the sun and the moon, it's not as just simple as the sun and the moon circulating above us to create this version of time and this understanding of harmonics. It goes into the way the planets move, the way the entire system. So if we can understand the sun and the moon being one version of us understanding ourselves and time and energy as a whole, then the planets are another version, a closer version in a sense, a closer version to who we are, because we are those water droplets in the starry night in the sky. So each planet and each movement of the planet affects our motion, our action. And this is what I'm seeing more and more, is how the design is, as far as our purpose and meaning here, is to either, are we going to get caught up in the egoic versions of the symptoms of this design, or are we and only react and respond to the symptoms of this harmonic, or are we going to find it in ourselves to be the space itself and make decisions that are coming from a higher purpose, a higher meaning, and an understanding of the symptoms and what it means within our harmonics that we have chosen at birth to experience, from our horoscopes and all that, as an entire collective, as a whole, like how it fits in the entire harmonics of this experience as a whole. So we are harmonizing chaos. That's what we are, living versions of harmonizing this chaos system. And it's like a harmonic chaos system. It's still a frequency. It's still a harmonic. It might be all over the place and here and there, but there is definitely a song being played that we call the Earth Plane Experience. And the leading characters are like the sun, the moon, the people, Earth people, dolphins, starring between March or April and July. Mercury is gonna kick your ass. So like there's these whole versions of the plots during this experience, and we have the free will to choose one of the two. We're gonna choose to either take this experience from the victim space or the empowered space. Like we're either going to choose to be subject to the symptoms, or we are going to go with the flow. And we as being here for an experience, there is no right or wrong way, because you learn from everything. You can't be making all these decisions, there is no right or wrong way to do it, because there's no particular way to do it. Like if one person on one side of the earth plane is doing one thing, then there's a balance on the other side of the earth plane. If one Libra on one side is making a decision that is not reflective of their higher potential, then there's going to be a Libra on the other side of the earth plane that is making the decision within the Mercury retrograde that will balance out the entire harmonies of the experience as a whole. And you can go even into like the masculinity and femininity, the feminine, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So it's not just about the horoscopes and the planets and the air and the water and the fire and the earth, but you also have the energies of masculine and femininity that are also another balance. And that also goes into like the timing of stuff. So like if Jupiter does a certain thing, if Mars aligns with Saturn, and that's going to affect a masculine timing or energy within the people. Overall, consciousness expands itself each day, each time, each fluctuation in these harmonics is a fundamental expansion. And it's happening on the microscopic level and the macroscopic level, and we can't see it all at once. This is why it's so difficult to understand like life and death, because we have been so focused on like the fear program of death and the victimization experience to see outside of ourselves and see with only our physical eyes and not understand the entire experience as a whole, what all this stuff means, and the timings and movements. Weather affects emotion, the ions, like the rain. When rain affects us, there's an ionic level that we are affected by. Like rain, the smell of rain makes us feel a certain way. The smell of nature makes us feel a certain way. The smell of smog makes you feel a certain way. The smell of bullshit makes you feel a certain way. Emotion is internal action, and the design influences action, but you make the choice. Like with your expression of the allness, experiencing separation, you make the choice within this emotion, within this design, within time. So the choices made are not a result of the influence, but a result of your level of consciousness within the design. Capitalism is like a sub layer of an artificial version of harmonics based upon the symptoms of the creative design, not the intent of the design. Your individual horoscope is a prescription for you and the collective adjustments within the design of chaos meeting harmony. So we individually are like prescriptions, individual harmonics of the collective design and like our familial design and our cultural design. These programs get installed to shut down people's individuality, people's creative space, which is why they take the arts and the music outside of schools, because it's too harmonic, it's too creative, it's too outside of the whitewashing, self-destructive program box of indoctrination. They don't want that to happen. They make people fight themselves, create gangs, and create systems where people create gangs and fight themselves. This is where the whole control grid of gangs and all that stuff comes from. Taking cultures, taking differences, and instead of seeing how they work harmonically, pinning them or making them fight each other. Taking these colors and these forgetting about the harmonics of the entire bigger picture, but zooming in on the destructive natures of it all and having it fight itself within the system instead of understanding the bigger pictures. In order to have an experience, source energy has split itself, for example, 7 billion times on this earth plane. To have an experience with horoscopes and weather and animals and the sun and the moon and Mercury energy, Mars energy, the planetary energies and how they move and what they mean. It split itself into humanity, dolphins, giraffes, Mercury retrograde, the sun, the moon. It split itself, and then we are individual experiences making the choice to either be subject to the victim of an experience or be the empowered space of that experience. Your purpose, your meaning, your star, your energy. So it's taking it and watering it down, watering down the entire cosmos to be out of harmonics and be subject to owners. So this shift is the ultimate separation, forgetting, remembering itself again.